Hi, and welcome to my channel where I make dishes inspired by some of my favorite video game characters. Today's dish is inspired by Yoshi from the Super Mario series. Who doesn't love Yoshi? He's such an adorable character from his look, to his sounds, and his mannerisms. He is such a sweet companion to Mario and his friends, and is a welcome addition in every game. I love how Yoshi is so cute that he appeals to people of all ages and all personalities. All of Yoshi's games are also so pure and fun, like Yoshi's Island and Yoshi's Woolly World. Again, these games are made for people of all kinds, and it is so fun to just dive into such a sweet, colorful, and adorable world with an equally sweet, colorful, and adorable Yoshi. When thinking of a dish for Yoshi, I knew I needed to include apples since he famously eats them in games like Super Mario World. But Yoshi doesn't just eat apples and fruit, he also can eat enemies, making him an omnivore. So I wanted to do a savory dish with apples and some kind of meat. I decided on apple pork chops since apples go pretty well with pork, and as a side, I made some onions and Brussels sprouts, because a Brussels sprout's color and shape reminds me of Yoshi's cute face. Here's what we'll need to make our apple pork chops with onions and Brussels sprouts. 4 boneless pork chops, salt, black pepper, Italian seasoning, garlic powder, 1 large yellow onion, about 1 pound of Brussels sprouts, 1 Granny Smith apple, 1 red apple like Fuji or Gala, dark brown sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, unsalted butter, honey, and fresh or dried thyme. First, you'll take your pork chops out and pat them dry with paper towels. On both sides, season the pork with salt, black pepper, garlic powder, and Italian seasoning. You don't really need to strictly measure these seasonings, just pour enough to coat the surfaces of your pork well. Once both sides are well seasoned, set the pork to the side to come to room temperature while you prepare the rest of the ingredients. Our next step is to core and slice our apples into small and thin wedges. You'll be cutting both a red and green apple for some more variety in color and taste. Place your apple wedges in a medium bowl and mix with 2 tablespoons of dark brown sugar, a half teaspoon of cinnamon, and a pinch of nutmeg. Stir everything together so the apples become decently coated, and then set the bowl aside for at least 10 minutes so some juices can start to form. Then you'll also chop your yellow onion and then half your Brussels sprouts. Place your onions and Brussels in a separate medium bowl and season with salt and pepper to taste. Pour in some olive oil and toss everything, then set this bowl aside as well. Once your apples have been sitting for at least 10 minutes, we can start to cook them. Heat a large pan or skillet on high heat, and once the surface becomes warm, add 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. Spread the butter evenly over your surface, and then add in your sliced apples in an even layer. When pouring your apples in, try not to let too much of the cinnamon juice fall into your pan. As the apples start to sizzle, you'll cook for 5 minutes without stirring or flipping to build up a good brown color on your apples. Once 5 minutes have passed, we'll switch our heat to medium and then begin to flip and stir the apples. Cook for another 5 to 10 minutes while stirring occasionally until the apples become softer and have a nice sear to them. At this point, you'll turn off the heat and add in 3 tablespoons of honey. Stir the apples a little bit and remove from the heat to let the apples caramelize and cool down for later. So with our apples done, the next step is our pork. Heat a separate large skillet over medium heat. Once the surface becomes warm, add in another 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter and place in your pork chops, pressing down slightly initially for a better sear. We're going to cook the pork chops for 5 minutes on one side, and then we'll flip the pork chops over. If the surface of your pan becomes too dry by the time you flip your pork chops, feel free to add a little bit more butter to the surface. We'll cook on the second side for another 3 to 5 minutes until the pork has an internal temperature of at least 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Once the pork is safe to eat and fully cooked, remove it from the heat and place it on a clean surface to rest for at least 5 minutes. Now to the same pan that you just cooked the pork, you're going to keep that heat on medium heat, and you'll add 1 more tablespoon of unsalted butter, scraping up some of the reserved brown fond on the bottom of the pan. Once your butter is all melted, add in your onions and Brussels sprouts, as well as about a teaspoon of thyme. First, let the vegetables cook for 3 minutes without stirring, and then after 3 minutes, you may begin stirring. You'll stir and cook for another 5 to 10 minutes until the vegetables are softer and more golden to your liking. From here, you can turn off the heat and it's time to combine everything for serving. You can either pre-slice your pork or leave it as is. Place the pork onto a plate next to your vegetables and then top the pork with your apples and applesauce. Now your dish is all ready to eat up. Mmm. I love how colorful and vibrant this dish looks, and it's also such a unique mix of flavors. It feels like putting sweet apples on top of pork is a huge mistake, but once you take a bite, you learn to love the flavor combination. This dish feels pretty healthy with a lot of different colors and nutrients, so you don't feel too heavy after you've cleaned your plate. And pro tip, if you leave a couple of apples for the end, you feel like you've saved yourself a little dessert. My husband and I were so pleasantly surprised by how much we love this dish, and we can't wait to make it again soon. Since Yoshi is an omnivore, this dish has a little bit of everything he loves to keep him satisfied. I assume it's rare for Yoshi to sit down to a nice plated meal, since he's commonly on the go, whether he's racing with his pals, searching for fruit, or babysitting some little rascals. But if any of his friends made this for him, he'd be as happy as a clam. And of course, it would all be great fuel for him to pop out a new Yoshi egg. The recipe card is in the video description if you'd like a more quick and concise version to give it a try. Like if you want a bite, subscribe for more geeky treats, and comment what foods Yoshi reminds you of. Thanks for following along.